Well, so we're ready now to do the discussion, and we have to start not only with the subject, but of course I have to first introduce my guest for the morning. I have James Agalga. He's a Deputy Interior Minister, but also Member of Parliament for Bolsa North, and thanks for joining us this morning. And let's just look at straight away the subject that has caught the attention of many people around, apart from what took place in Parliament. Yesterday, there was a demolition exercise, and I believe you're very much aware. One person was shot dead, as according to the Ghanaian Times, as a gang attempted to stop the demolition exercise, and a team of policemen from the Accra Regional Police Command shot and killed a young man among a group protesting against the demolition exercise ongoing at the Adenta area. They were said to have been occupying a land that belonged to the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, and the eviction took place yesterday, and it followed months or even weeks of notices that had been given the encroachers, and as a result of that, one person was shot dead. The police said the deceased, identified as a J. Akpo 22, and others attacked the police personnel providing the security for the demolition of about 320 illegal structures. And the concern is that the exercise was not undertaken in a humane phase.
Well, thank you and good morning to your viewers. What happened yesterday for me was unfortunate. Unfortunate in the sense, the shooting incident at Adenta. You would recall that time without number, the police had notified the squatters on the land to move away, to make way for the land to be used for the purpose for which it was acquired. But the people turned deaf ears to all the warnings. And yesterday, when the police actually went there to carry out the demolition exercise, we are informed that a gang of armed men decided to take the law into their hands by attacking the police. I mean, you don't do that. That is unacceptable in a country such as ours. And so the police had no choice but to return fire, I mean, in protection of their own lives. That resulted in the unfortunate death of the person who...
Well, but that really is account of the police, because there are contrary accounts, especially from some eyewitnesses and perhaps those who were around, especially those who were among the evictees, that there was no show of force by any of those supposedly land guards who were involved in this very incident.
Well, the reports we have indicates clearly that weapons were recovered from the scene of attack.
What type of weapons? Guns? Or
I should think so. Machetes, guns, etc. were recovered from the scene of the incident. Now, you must understand that the police are human beings and will not open fire on anybody if, one, there is no resistance, two, if their own lives are not under threat. It is evident, even if you watch some of the video footage that was aired, you would see the resistance that people put up. They acted as though warnings, notices had not been served on them. In any case, nobody doubts the fact that that land belongs to civil aviation. Why have the squatters decided some of them put up permanent structures on the land? Why must it be so? You see, lawlessness is beginning to become part and parcel of our lives as Ghanaians, and that must be discouraged. Government acquired the land for a specific purpose. Why have people decided to move onto the land and put up permanent structures?
But where was government in the first place when these quarters, or if not encroachers, were gradually encroaching on the lands? Because we're being told some of them really are developers, and it means that they've invested a lot of money in them. Well, not justifiably though.
Well, I expect any genuine developer, who believes in value for money, to conduct searches before he or she acquires a parcel of land. Now, if anybody carries out a search on that parcel of land, it would become evident that that land belongs to civil aviation. And so no private individual can dispose of that land to a developer. And so if you're a developer and you decide, you disregard what is there at the Lands Commission and go ahead and transact business with a private individual in relation to a parcel of land situate at that location, then you have a very corrupt mind. I mean, sorry to put it that way in a very blunt manner, you have a corrupt mind. And so for me, the argument that what was government doing, in any case, government issued notice for well over a year that, listen, you people are not entitled to live here. Very soon, we will be evicting you. That was to give people the space and opportunity to live, the place. But they persisted, they stayed on. And unfortunately, that is what resulted in, the problems we had yesterday. It's unfortunate that life was lost, but we must discourage lawlessness in our country. You don't move onto a parcel of land without conducting a search. You enter into negotiations for the sale or, if you like, a lease of that land, and you straight away you start developing. The question to ask is, who gave them permits to put up those structures? Because if they went through due process,
they would have noticed.
You would even be required to produce your title deeds. And nobody can acquire a title deed in relation to that parcel of land because it is registered in the name of civil aviation.
Well, your point is well made. Now, following this very incident, what follows then? Because we have, a dead body in the morgue currently.
Yes, some arrests have been effected. 3 individuals were arrested, apart from the one who unfortunately died. I believe the police are going to carry out investigations, and those who are found to have been part of that attack on the security agencies, if evidence is gathered, they will be prosecuted.
And then following that?
Well, if you are prosecuted and found guilty, the consequences are clear. But the point is that the demolition exercise, went on, even though there were some, of course, resistance, but nevertheless, it went on well. And I believe civil aviation are in a better position to put that land to good use.
We do understand how, traditional authorities perhaps might have ceded their lands to the state on specific projects. Now, if the projects have not taken place in a very long time, and perhaps even those lands have not been part of those that had been ceded back to the traditional authorities, but those traditional authorities took the law into their own hands and started perhaps selling portions of those lands, what usually should be the remedies?
Well, you are asking me to identify remedies that are available to people who illegally sell land which belongs to
these
the
people,
state.
I'm asking this because these people bought the land from the traditional authorities.
To start with, whatever transaction must have taken place between traditional authorities and the so-called developers is null and void. It could never have taken place in the eyes of the law. It's a non-starter. You see, if you are diligent in this country, before you purchase land or you acquire a leasehold interest in land, the first thing you must do is to carry out a search to convince yourself about the true ownership of the land before you go into any meaningful transaction. And so, barring that, you have no case. Whatever you do is null and void. You put something on nothing. When you do that, whatever you have put on nothing would collapse.
Okay, so now are we having the situation continuing today in terms of the exercise?
No, I suspect the police were able to demolish the structures they had clearly marked out for demolition. And so those who have been arrested, of course, they are going to be screened. Statements are going to be taken. Some investigation would be carried out. Those who are not found to have contravened the law definitely would be allowed to go. But those who are found to have engaged the police in what we saw yesterday, it would definitely be prosecuted.
Okay, we'll have to move on to the next subject. And yesterday in Parliament, it was quite interesting. It depends on which paper you're reading and how it's reported. On the front page of the Daily Searchlight, that's how it's been captioned. Merchant Bank Ajaho betrays people, and according to the paper, a demonstration is expected to follow suit. On the front page of the New Crusading Guide, captured this way: attempts to block Merchant Bank sale, MPP motion shot down. And we have this one. It says blows in Parliament, and Ajaho halt Fortis debate, but minority says aluta continua. So we'll see how that goes. And the graphic, Daily Graphic has this caption: Speaker dismisses minority's motion on Merchant Bank Fortis deal. And you were in Parliament yesterday.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, you should have been satisfied with whatever took place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
First of all, we must all agree or understand that when the Merchant Bank takeover became a reality, even while the processes were ongoing, Andrews Awuni, the former spokesperson for President Kufuor under the MPP, decided to go to court. Now, Andrews Awuni,
you said under the MPP, Andrews Awuni
was the spokesperson for President Kufuor.
And so you're linking him to MPP?
Oh, of course.
He runs a civil society organization in Ghana, as far as we can say.
Well, but the fact remains that the same Andrews Awuni was the spokesperson for President Kufuor. That is a notorious fact. And so I can state it. It's a statement of fact.
Continue, sir.
Now, Awuni went to court and sued a number of, persons, artificial, if you like, or legal persons, and, of course, companies. They were all joined in the suit. Now, the suit is pending. But somehow one of the defendants, the fourth defendant in the case, Fortis Private Equity Fund, raised issues regarding the capacity of Andrews Awuni to have instituted the suit against it in the first place. Arguments were made in court, and unfortunately for Andrews Awuni, his capacity, lack of capacity, was established. And so
by the court.
Yes, so the suit against Fortis was dismissed. Now, as soon as the suit against Fortis was dismissed, Andrews Awuni immediately filed an appeal. And so legally speaking,
the case is still in court.
The case is still pending. So a notice of appeal was filed. Records have been settled.
So that was what the speaker sought to.
What the speaker sought to do clearly had its foundation in the standing orders of Parliament. Remember, the practice and procedure in Parliament is regulated by the standing orders of Parliament, which takes its source from the Constitution, which is the fundamental law of the land. And so when that motion was filed, and look at how the motion was captioned. The motion was captioned in this manner. 5, private, that is the order paper I am reading for the benefit of our viewers, that this Honorable House investigates the offer by an acquisition of Merchant Bank by Fortis Equity Fund Limited and other related matters. So this motion is very broad in its nature. If you look, going by the caption, that this House investigates the offer by an acquisition of Merchant Bank by Fortis Equity Fund Limited and other related matters. Now, this same motion, if you look at its caption,
it's before the court.
Its focus they are the same issues that the court is seized with.
And so?
So the point we're making is that when Dominic Nitiwul sought to move this motion, Honorable Dominic Nitiwul, the majority leader, of course, raised a point of order. And that is permissible under the standing orders. And he made clear reference to Order 93.1 of the standing orders, which reads as follows. Reference shall not be made to any matter on which judicial decision is pending in such a way as may, in the opinion of Mr. Speaker, prejudice the interest of parties to the action. I have already told you what the nature of Dominic Nitiwul's motion was. He was calling for an investigation into the offer and acquisition by Fortis of Merchant Bank. Now, if you read the ruling, which was delivered on the 18th day of December, that is the ruling which dismissed Andrew Sawuni's suit against Fortis, you would understand that the reliefs, about 19 reliefs were being sought. And those reliefs are all encompassing. In fact, the gravamen of that suit was about the investigation of the acquisition and offer by Fortis of Merchant Bank. And so there are no different issues. So when the objection was raised just before Dominic Nitiwul, could move the motion, a heated argument ensued between the majority and minority. And the speaker then decided to, retire for a while, return and deliver a ruling.
According to the minority, and for which we have Kweku Kwarteng, I believe he's a member of parliament for Obuasi, and he's also a spokesperson of the minority on finance issues. And we would want to get him on the line. We seem to have lost him, but if we get him, please continue with submission. And
so the point I'm making is that those who think that something untoward happened in Parliament yesterday must rewrite their notes. Because everything that happened in Parliament had its foundation in the standing orders and the law. The Speaker of Parliament, in delivering himself on the point of order that was raised, made it clear that, look, because of the pendency of the suit brought by Andrew Sawuni, there was no way Dominic Nitiwul could move a motion without making reference to the issues the court is seized with.
Well, yesterday...
And therefore, in order not to prejudice the interest of the parties, it was only fair and just that the motion be thrown out at that stage.
Okay, we do understand that. We do understand that. And following that, there was even a press conference convened by both the minority and the majority leaders. And we have to speak to Kweku Kwarteng. He's a member of parliament for Obuasi, but also speaks on finance issues for the minority. A very good morning to you, sir. What specifically were your concerns, especially with the proceedings that transpired in Parliament yesterday?
Well, the Constitution requires that when 50% of members ask for an emergency meeting, the Speaker ought to review the request and to grant or not to grant. That was done some 2 weeks ago. The Speaker reviewed it, and yesterday the Speaker announced that he got clerks to check from the court whether if there were any such discussions, those discussions would have any illegitimate effect on the case in court, and that he subsequently invited us. You see, that was what the Speaker said, that he commissioned a search when the request for the emergency meeting came. So it was very strange when, after the Speaker had given the minority the go-ahead to move the motion for an investigation into the circumstances of the Merchant Bank Fortis deal, somehow the Speaker turned round. It was a very interesting U-turn and said, no, you cannot do that because the matter is in court. So when the Speaker called the search to be made, before he asked us to come from all over the country, the Speaker has power to determine when you ask for an emergency meeting, whether that meeting should happen. And when he has called a search to be done in the court, and according to him, he got some information, and on the basis of that, decided to invite us, only to, after being given pressure from the NDC side, turn around and say, no, I think this matter is in court. It was unfortunate. I do not see why the majority side, the NDC side, feel so strongly about any attempt to look into the circumstances of this merchant bank sale. I do I'll have time to tell you to be able to explain. Maybe on another time we can do it on your network. Some of the issues would have loved to raise in Parliament yesterday, but the fact that the majority does not want us to look into the case is unfortunate. It is pensioners' money. Merchant Bank was acquired for the purposes of making money on pensioners' contributions so that they'll get a better deal when they go on pension.
Okay.
What is happening now is completely unacceptable.
We don't understand the point you're making there, but following that very ruling by the Speaker, do you then concur that in any way there could have been some level of prejudice because of the appeal that had been already filed by Andrew Zawoni, and so invariably the case already was in court? What
is the case? The Speaker said that he had already done a search, and so he was fully aware of the matters in court. What is the appeal about? The appeal is about locus. Whether or not Andrew Zawoni is in a position to mitigate the matter. What has that got to do with Parliament looking into the issues? What has that got to do? And the point I'm making is that the Speaker is a lawyer. He's been in the House for a very long time. He has a lot of experience in these matters. And you would recall that when he himself chaired the appointment committee, when the appointment of Honorable Mumuni came, he said that in spite of the fact that there were aspects of his conduct on the basis of which they were going to make a decision about his nomination, there were aspects of in court he considered that it was possible for the court to do its work and Parliament to also do it. If somebody is appealing in court about locus, whether or not the person is in a position to litigate about the matter, should that stop Parliament from doing its work?
But if his locus is ascertained, that invariably also means that they go into substantives of the case. Is that not
the locus is, we should not be thinking about the Parliament. That's how we do our work. But if the locus was granted, that he could go ahead and litigate the matter, and Awoni then will have to make a decision or not. Given what Parliament is doing, he wants to go ahead because the original case has been dismissed.
But are you invariably saying that after the determination of his locus or not, and if he had a locus, if you had foreknowledge whether Andrew Zawoni would have discontinued the case in court?
I am saying that if the matter was determined and the appeals court said he had the locus to go ahead with the case, and Zawoni will have the opportunity to make that decision, whether he wants to continue litigating the matter, given the locus that has been granted him. And that will be for him to determine.
Yeah, because
technically the matter in court is locus, and the standing orders of Parliament do not say that when the matter is in court, you cannot investigate or discuss it. The standing orders say that if, in the opinion of the Speaker, discussing the matter in Parliament will prejudice the matter in court, then the Speaker may exercise his discretion to say you cannot do it. What I'm saying is that the Speaker, mindful of this, conducted a search. This is the Speaker's words. They are not my words. Before he convened us, I was in Obuasi. I had to come to Accra on Sunday to attend this meeting on Monday. If the Speaker knew that given the things he said, that we're not in a position to debate, why did he call Parliament at all?
But
it was a U-turn. My reading was that it was a U-turn based on pressure given by the majority side. I consider that unfortunate. And I am saying that if Mumuni's case could be discussed in Parliament and Mumuni nomination endorsed, in spite of the fact that there were aspects about his conduct that were in court, then why are we changing the rules this time? And what was wrong with discussing issues of conflict of interest and those matters we intended to raise if somebody is seeking a court declaration, whether or not he has locus in a matter? I just think it was an attempt simply to frustrate any investigation into this matter because people have things to hide. It's as simple as that.
And so for you, that especially on the subject of whether to make Parliament look at the case, it's just pure position of double standards. Is that not the case? And now,
yes, it was double standard, and that double standard is fueled by the desire not to get the public to pay attention to the issues we were going to raise. But as we have indicated, we'll go ahead and raise those cases anyway. We have other options to consider. But I want to make the point that this is not a matter for the NPP. It's not a matter for minority or anything. It is a matter for pensioners, and we are inviting the media to look into the circumstances of this sale. And as the Christian Council has done, as the TUC has done, we expect the media to rise up and oppose.
Well, is that not what the media has always been doing before the minority, based on the quorum it had?
Well, I agree with you. The media has done very well on this matter.
But you think the media has not done enough?
Well,
okay, I want you to stay on the line for me for 5 minutes, and then I just have to come to your colleague who is also here. Now, if you look at what your colleague is raising, it raises an issue of trust and also issues of not having the interest of the public, so to speak, in mind.
Look, it is sad that my brother Honorable Kwating has taken this position.
Well, that's been their position all along.
He is now accusing the Speaker of Parliament.
He's not said that, has he?
But he has accused the Speaker. He said the Speaker, knew full well that, what the search results were. He had conducted the search prior to the recall. And yet, he agreed to recall Parliament to come and transact business. The question I would ask my brother Honorable Kwating is whether right from the outset he did not know about the pendency of the Andrew Awuni suit. He knew, but regardless of that suit, they went ahead of about 80 of them, more than 15% of the number, as is required under the Constitution, signed up to that, motion filed by Honorable Dominic Nitiwu. Now, what he has failed to tell you is that under the law, the Speaker had no choice. And so I wouldn't just go on and on and on. Let us stick to the law. What does the law say? They themselves invoked Article 112, Clause 3. And it reads as follows. Notwithstanding any other provision of this article, 15% of members of Parliament may request a meeting of Parliament.
And that's what they did.
And the Speaker shall, within 7 days after the receipt of the request, summon Parliament.
So you're saying whether or not the Speaker had...
The language here is couched in mandatory terms. The Speaker shall. He has no choice in the matter. So he shall, once more than 15% of the entire membership of Parliament have appended their signature. He had no choice. And so for Honorable Kwating to say that the Speaker conducted a search and knew beforehand that the matter, the motion they had brought was untenable, for me it's unfair. He all along knew about the pendency of the suit, and yet I suspect he was one of the people who appended their signatures.
He would want to respond to that
to compel the Speaker to recall us.
He would want to respond.
No,
Mr. Kwating, please respond to that.
The Speaker has power to regulate the business of the House. That is also constitutional.
Yeah.
Now, given his reading, and I think he's reading this particular provision in isolation, given his reading, what was the point in the Speaker conducting the search to find out whether there was the subject matter, the matter of sub judice? What was the point? If the Speaker was bound to just do it, then why didn't he just do it? Why did the Speaker inform us that he had conducted the search and he was convinced that the debate should happen? That was the Speaker's initial position, that the matter, the motion should be moved. so that we can have the discussion. It was after Nitiwu got up to speak that it was as though hell was breaking loose. The NDC members in Parliament they just went mad. And then after a while, there was this U-turn that no, you cannot do it because it's in court. I am saying that before the Speaker convened us, the matter was in court, and at the sitting, he could have told us that this matter is in court, so I'm unable to let us discuss that. He asked me to move his motion.
Okay, your point has been made. That went mad. What do you mean by went mad? Is it that perhaps they got up?
Should have been there. You should have been there to see it for yourself.
Well, we watched it on TV.
They were all over the place. They were just doing anything. And subsequently, they issued a statement. And you get it clearly from the statement that before they came to the House, they had written the statement. So you can imagine.
Okay.
When people have written a statement,
please hold mute. Mute.
The business of the House doesn't have.
Okay. If you make a content analysis of what Mr. Kwatin is saying, it's as if that the majority is defending. Has become a defendant or a spokesperson.
We have not become a spokesperson for anybody. We believe in due process.
Which is?
Yesterday, after the business in Parliament had come to an end.
The Speaker's ruling inured to your benefit, didn't it?
The Speaker's ruling did not inure to our benefit. We are not running away from anything. You see, we are not running away from anything. And so, after the ruling, we held a press conference. The majority leader addressed a press conference and brought out certain issues. Now, the press conference centered on how First Rand, that South African bank's offer was a bad one, and why SNIT decided not to continue with that deal.
Why was it necessary for the majority to be going into all those nitty-gritties?
No, you see,
why you the transaction advisors or negotiators of the whole transaction?
Honorable Kwating has misunderstood the procedure.
Which is?
So, excuse me to say so. He says Honorable Nitiwu was not allowed to move the motion, and that just before he could move the motion, hell broke loose. He's misunderstood the procedure. If you look at Order 93, and I've read that order, okay, that order itself, when the majority leader raised the point of order, it was in the nature of a preliminary objection. Because listen to what the order says. It says that in the opinion of Mr. Speaker, prejudice the interests of parties to the action. That is, if in the opinion of Mr. Speaker, whatever motion is sought to be moved, if allowed to be moved, would prejudice the interests of the parties, then the motion must be halted. Now, you don't sit back and allow... Yeah, you don't sit back and allow such a motion to be moved. Because when it is moved, the very mischief that this order seeks to cure, the prejudice that will be occasioned...
Mr. Gaga, your point has been made. Your point has been made.
No, he's online. He's gone on and on. Can I make this point? I've had let me conclude on this.
Sir, conclude for me.
Yes.
Conclude.
And so...
You have a minute.
And so the majority leader had to raise that point of order, and it is in the nature of a preliminary objection. So what is he saying? That what does he mean by suggesting that hell broke loose? Where did that hell break loose? We did what was procedurally acceptable.
Your point has been made, sir.
And the Speaker upheld the objection.
Mr. Kwatin, your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is that I don't know why my good friend talks about preliminary objection. The fact of the matter is that before the Speaker asked Nitiwu to move his motion, the Speaker had taken many views on the floor. This view about the matter being in court had been covered already. Honorable Agbesi had spoken. Honorable Dominic Ayene, the Deputy Attorney General, had spoken on this matter. Honorable Kunkwa had spoken on this matter. They had raised all these matters. And then the Speaker said, I have already averted my mind to all these matters. Dominic, move your motion. So what is he talking about?
I would want to ask you a question.
You see, that is where he misunderstands the procedure.
Let me quickly.
You see,
got report.
He misunderstood.